Welcome to Rokkenjima. I'm Lorenzo, and I will be hosting the first book club of the When We Cry podcast book club. I am here with my co-host, Evitris. Say hello.
Hello.
And the other members, please introduce yourself.
Hello, people with good taste. I'm Des.
Hello, this is Mushroom.
And this is Dee. Good morning. It's too early.
Yes, it's about 8 a.m. for me and Dee, and it's way too early for us to be up. But we are dedicated, so we are going to go through with this.
Dedicated's a word.
Look at this dedication.
Yes. So the way this will work is the first half of this podcast will have us doing a recap of a few chapters from episode 1 of Umineko. And we'll leave some time to discuss a little bit of each chunk we go over. For the second half, we'll warn you, we'll go into spoiler full discussion. So for the first half, we're going to do a spoiler free discussion of the story. And then after that, we're going to discuss the story from the point of view of people who have completed Umineko, and we'll point out things that we've noticed or talk about other things.
We'll warn you when we get to the spoilers.
So don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to log off before we ruin your experience. The beginning of Umineko, for you who are following along for the very first time, you're going to come across Kinzo, the head of the Ushiramiya family, screaming his head off about this lady named Beatrice, right? Oh, what's the big deal about her, huh?
Are we assuming people are listening to the voices or not voices?
If you are reading along with Umineko and haven't installed the voice patch, please do, because that is more than half the experience. If you aren't, in order to convince you, you'll have this one actor, I can't recall his name at the moment, but he's very good. He's just screaming, "Oh, Beatrice!" Oh, that's perfect, yes. He's always like that, just screaming off this Italian lady's name. And you're like, okay, what's the big idea? So you have his personal doctor doing a checkup on him, telling him, hey, he's gonna, die soon, stop drinking. And then he tells his servant, Genji, to bring him more drinks. And that's the beginning of this honestly amazing story, but, stick with us. Then you hear the opening. And yeah, do you guys want to stop and talk about that really quick? How great it is?
Kinzo's voice actor is Mugihito, by the way.
Speaking about Kinzo, I had quite a big first impression on him. Like, his clothes, they're so weird. And the color combination too, I was quite weirded out by his outfit.
Well, he's basically just wearing a suit, but he's putting over a ridiculous cape over the top.
Yeah, he kind of is. Okay, so I started reading it with just the Ryukishi sprites, and they're pretty aight.
Yes, oh my god.
Weird for me to say that the moment I saw the PS3 sprites, I'm like, I could see people calling this guy daddy.
Oh! Oh!
Well...
That is a take.
Yo, but he is kind of, in the PS3 sprites, they're all hot. They're all hot.
When you compare it to the original sprites, certainly. I mean, he looks like a demented owl in the original sprites.
Like, in PS3, almost every one of the Ushiramiyas look fucking hot. It's just an extremely attractive family.
I mean, if you look at the PS3 sprites, it's really everybody's so well done. There's DILFs and MILFs.
And apparently Gilf as well, so...
Well, you are going to be reading this story for upwards of 100 hours, so they at least give you some eye candy.
What?
Nah, that's one of the selling points of the story, so you should know what you're getting yourself into.
I'm just a little concerned that people that end up hearing the thing will just get discouraged at the very beginning.
I think it's a well-known fact. If you've gotten into it, you probably realise by now that it's a pretty long thing.
Straight up, if you're reading this along with us, it means you've already paid for it, so, or pirated it. But, assuming you paid for it, I guess you're already in here. You want to waste $30?
I mean, it's a sunk cost fallacy. If you already spend that much money on buying the game, you might as well enjoy it and play the shit out of it, isn't it?
Exactly. We're going to motivate you to keep reading because it's a very good story and it's well worth your time and money if you pay for it.
I've bought it twice.
Exactly.
I bought it on disc and I just recently bought it off Good Old Games.
Yes. I saw you playing it on Discord, but shall we go on? All right. So we open up post the opening on the Ushiromiya
Umineko is so long, it has 2 opening scenes.
Yes. Reuniting at an airport. You begin with the point of view of Battler Ushiromiya talking to his cousin George. And
Georgie.
Georgie. Alright, so you got this dapper, red-headed, spiky-haired man talking to this kind of nerdy-looking yellow suit, yellow belly, who's about 5 years older than him. You got this 18-year-old and 23-year-old cousins shooting the shit, and then you introduce George's father, Hideyoshi. He's the president of a food company, and you meet his wife, Ava. So Ava is the oldest daughter of the Ushiromiyas. I think like a very interesting point about him is that he has a Kansai accent, which is what people usually localize in English to a southern accent. So he's a more impressionable, bigger personality, but he's actually kind of a poser. So they mentioned that he switches back.
Because he's not actually from that region, and they mentioned that he's... He actually stops using it when he's around people who are actually from that.
Yeah, it was really funny. But yeah, he's a big poser, big personality, but he's got a big old heart. So,
I love him.
Yeah, he's a likable guy. Keep your eyes on him. Battler, the main character that you're seeing the story through, he says that, this family has such a good relationship, as opposed to my family, where he has a very tenuous relationship between him and his father, whom has remarried with a stepmother who is present. So he actually, has a very respectable relationship with Kirie, his stepmother, who quickly got remarried to his father after Battler's original mother passed away. So there's some really noticeable tension in the air whenever they talk with each other. I mean, it's very friendly banter, and you wouldn't tell that they're having a huge fight, but as it's later revealed, there was big enough infighting that Battler was actually absent from the family for a few years. But we'll get to that later. So you meet Kirie, who's the ballbuster. She has a really cool design. White hair.
One thing I've always had an issue with her design is that weird clip under her breast that makes the tie go along her stomach. So if you notice, the tie goes around her chest, then it's clipped underneath it, and then it makes it go along her body. It's like
she clips it under her boob, so that it just
she does. It's fitted. The tie is fitted.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't hang down. Why is it clipped under her boobs?
I have one theory, and it's kind of stupid, but maybe she was expecting the turbulence of the boat to make the tie flap all over the place, and that would make her look less cool. So she was just like, "No, I'm going to clip it."
I can't have that.
That's somehow more stupid.
I know, but it's the only reason I could possibly think of. I mean, to be fair, this is a woman who walks around with a shirt that's got diamonds cut out on it, so...
That's a badass shirt. I'd totally wear that.
It's like October, isn't that cold? Why would you want to make your stomach cold?
While we're still on Kirie, how does none of you find the belt she has on her arm weird?
I grew up with Final Fantasy X, and one of the characters, Lulu's dress is literally made of belts. This is nothing.
I mean, it's kind of funny, but, I always felt that Kirie's design gave me a really huge, punk feel. She doesn't need one belt. If she wants to get it, she needs to get, 50 more belts on there.
Yeah, why doesn't she have any belts on her legs? Why not more belts on her wrists? Why not a belt on her neck?
That's a choker.
I mean, she's not putting belts on her own neck. She's putting belts on Rudolph's necks.
That's true. That is true.
Yo, do you think she's a top?
Do you think? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious.
I mean, it's obvious to anybody that Kirie definitely pegs that man every single night. She wears the pants in this household, or whatever that means.
Why does every conversation with you end up in how characters behaving bad? What the hell?
I think, to be fair, in this specific scenario, it's quite relevant, given Kirie herself is quite happy to talk about that sort of thing to some degree, at least with Battler.
Also, if we're going to talk about that, Battler is there's definitely kind of like a fuckboy energy, but a gentle fuckboy. He's a mega fuckboy, but when he's in bed, he's like, "Oh, are you okay? Here, let's go slower."
Oh
my god.
We know that apparently, at least to some degree in this regard, his behaviour reminds Kirie, of Rudolph, his father.
I mean, you can totally see Rudolph as a massive fuckboy.
Yeah, he is. That's kind of the whole problem with his relationship with his son.
Battler and Rudolph are very similar, which is a problem, but also Battler is very similar to, Kinzo, his grandfather, so that's Also a problem.
Anyways, I'll continue. We just talked about Battler's father, Rudolph Ushiromiya, who is the youngest son of the Ushiromiya family. Kyrie and Hideyoshi talk a little bit about her absent daughter, who, was too sick to attend. But they switch the conversation over to the youngest daughter's arrival, Rosa, and her daughter, Maria. Maria is a very, what the Japanese would call an eccentric person, but I think, as you'll see further on, she's probably autistic.
There's a lot of hints towards that, but it's never been really confirmed, but she pretty much is coded that way.
So please give her, the patience. Don't write her off as totally annoying,
she is
just
kind of
in
annoying,
the way
though.
Character. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. You just have to deal with her, but she ends up being a very valuable person as a character, later on in the story. It's
Brilliant.
Please be kind to Maria.
Yeah, be kind to Maria, you know.
And that's basically the beginning of the first batch of characters being introduced to the story.
Okay, so you get the airport scene. They travel onto some kind of boat place. They meet Kumasawa, Jessica, and Goda. Kumasawa and Goda being servant people. Kumasawa being a really old lady. Goda being a newbie, but also he's been there only for a year, but he's also older. And Jessica's another cousin.
The daughter of the oldest couple of the Shiromiya family. But we'll meet them later.
It's also important to note that Battler hasn't seen his family for 6 years.
So everybody's giving comments about, oh, you're so big now, and oh, you look so different. So they travel by plane to a nearby island named Nijima to meet Jessica, the youngest daughter, cousin. And Kumasawa, they take a boat over to... Oh, I should mention there's also this really weird pervert scene between her and Battler, but forget
Battler,
it.
can you chill?
Yeah, it's really weird. It happens maybe a couple more times, but we implore you, the story is
not
well worth it. Just ignore that part.
Yeah, why does Balor's really pervy in the first two?
Yeah, honestly speaking, I mean, if you're a VN reader, you've probably already seen even more worse, erotic / uncomfortable Dukkan scenes anyway. So, just bear with us. Just go through it. You'll like it, It's fun. And just to say, if you're really afraid of incest or that kind of stuff, Umineko is intense.
Okay, cool. So we're already on Rokkenjima. This is the stage of the story. It introduces the rest of the cast. Natsuhi, who is the wife of the oldest Ushiromiya son, Kraus, and therefore Jessica's parents. You come across one of the servants named Cannon. He is about 16 years old. You meet Conan. You meet the other one, Shannon. Shannon?
Shannon.
They're pseudonyms because they come from a nearby orphanage and they consider each other sisters. Cannon and Shannon.
Cannon's boy.
Cannon's a boy.
Yes.
So they consider each other siblings.
So, one thing that we should really go over as well is Rokkenjima is part of the Izu archipelago. There's a lot of tiny ass islands, but also it takes several hours to get there by plane and boat. But also there's a storm for some reason, and it's gonna be it's kind of sketchy. The weather's a big deal in this one, and it's gonna
yeah. There's a big omen that Maria actually notices on the way there, where the shrine that was usually very visible from the boat ride towards the place, it's gone. They speculate that, a lightning strike took it down, but she can't get over the fact that this is probably an omen, something bad's going to happen. And that in addition to the incoming typhoon that's going to come by, ominous foreshadowing. The titular Umineko are actually absent as well, so shit's going to go down in the next few chapters.
I mean, there's another thing that we didn't even get around to talk about yet. We passed by the scene where Battler is deathly afraid of any moving vehicles, like a plane or a boat, and he keeps screaming, "Fall, fall!"
Yes. First episode, it's so fucking funny. I cannot read these slice of life parts of the episode without a smile on my face. It's so funny. I love it.
It's very endearing,
Yeah, for sure. So following that, all the family members are set. Everybody's at the Rokkenjima estate. As you could tell by now, they're very rich. They're rolling in it. And that's thanks to the mythical gold of the Ushiramiya head, Kinzo, his 10 tons of gold, and the siblings, the 4 siblings, Kraus, Rudolph, Ava, and Rosa meet every year annually to discuss the money issue. How are they going to dole it out?
I love that they call it a conference versus just a family gathering.
It's a business meeting, so that's
it is.
Yeah, so that's really what kind of is done. Also, alleged gold. Let's remind ourselves
it's
that
mythical.
It's not. Yeah,
yeah. The 10 tons, like who the hell has that? But apparently they're stinking rich, so it's not a far off idea. But the family's very aware of our crazy dad has gold? Where did he get all this money?
Yeah, I mean, a crazy dude who even owns a whole ass island,
Exactly. So they're here to talk about money. The tension between each other is really high, and so is the tension between them and their father, Kinzo, because he was a very stern father and also not completely there, but they all have sort of bad blood within each other. From here you can tell the Ushiramiyas, they're not the happiest family. Like, the cousins are fine. They get along great. And they're just like, the adults are stupid.
At this point, I think it's easy also to, notice that Goda kind of, is mean to Shannon and Catman.
Yeah, I don't know. I completely started hating Goda from that point.
So the adults and the cousins, they split up, and for the adults to discuss the money problem, apparently they suspect Kraus, the oldest one, and the next in line to inherit all the money, is actually embezzling the inheritance and trying to compromise with him, say, hey, split the money, give us in advance, a deposit of sorts for goodwill so we can kind of sweep this embezzlement thingy under the rug and we'll be chill. But Kraus is in such huge money trouble and has bad business deal after bad business deal, and he's like, well, hey, how about Delsny lands? Isn't that cool?
He builds resorts and then sells them and tears them down, and it's all just been a massive money sinkhole. Everyone else is not great either, because they're all in, money troubles. I don't know, it's 1986. Was it booming then?
I think it was doing pretty well. I mean, it's kind of funny actually hearing, because Kraus is talking about how his industry is about to go big. I'm pretty sure Japan had a really bad financial crash in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So...
The bubble pop?
Yeah, in 1991 to 2003, there was a huge Japanese economy crashes, and it's called the Lost Decade. And I really like the fact that because Yukishi's writing this retroactively, he really could just be like, oh, look at you, Cross, really thinking that he could get his money back. And I also like the fact that it also mentions how Kingzo just kind of wrangled this whole ass island from the Japanese government. Because during the 1950s or something, he was able to just bribe a bunch of people and just paid off everyone and just got himself a whole island to live on.
Because he got in good with the forces stationed over, because he spoke English, which is another thing to note. You've probably noticed that they have all these really weird European-y-ish sounding names, because Kinzo is a huge Anglophile.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing to note is if Kraus was like, you know what, screw resorts, let's invest in anime. What if that goes big? That would have been big. That would have been a money thing.
He would have doubled the fortune.
Easy, because anime went crazy in the 1980s and 90s and onwards.
Exactly.
Can you imagine if Kraus was into Gundam? Damn.
Oh my god, I could totally imagine that him just in his little room where he has all of his Gundam or Transformers all lined up, where he just goes there and plays with them, and if Natsuhi knocks on the door, he's just get out, don't touch my things, don't even come and look at them. Could you imagine that? That's so funny to think.
He'd have his own little office, just like Kinzo, because that's the one other plot point that we haven't really covered, is the fact that Kinzo is not coming out of his room.
Oh yeah, he refuses to meet with anybody because he's so caught up in his occult research. Yeah, so the family really hates each other, Kinzo doesn't want to see his kids. The kids are kind of trying to...
infighting.
Yeah, they're...
But Goda is a good chef. But Goda is a good chef, and the food is delicious. That's like the only thing the family all seem to agree on unanimously, is the food is delicious.
Oh yeah.
I could taste the food.
So we've met everybody. Perfect. So if you haven't read beyond this point, please log off now. Alright, you gone? They're gone, guys. Okay,
gone. Okay,
spoilers!
Fucking, like, everything.
Everything.
Ugh, everything.
It's such a small section, but it reveals so much already.
Can I talk about how they mentioned Angie? You know, it went over my head. Like...
Yeah, it's like super depressing to read about it. I think it's like when you first meet like Eva, Hideyoshi, and Kirie, and then Eva's just like, oh, I heard poor little Angie couldn't come onto the like island. It's okay. Like, what's so good about the island anyway? And then Hideyoshi's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, we will send you some medicine when we get home.
Yeah, they're gonna come home.
They're making plans for the next day, because that's what you would do.
Yes.
You'd be like, yeah, sure, this is what I'm going to do next. My life's going to continue. Because why would this conference be any different from all the other ones?
Whenever I read it, it like kills me.
It killed them too.
Well, we didn't even talk about the part that Kawabata is flying the plane, you know? Kawabata.
It's the plane, though. It's the boat, isn't it?
Who is the pilot?
No, he's a pilot and the boat captain.
What?
It's weird.
It's the same guy?
Yeah.
Fuck is Kawabata? Chill.
I mean, it's the same name. So if you've noticed through Ryukishi's works, Kawabata and Okanogi are like his throwaway stand-in
Really?
characters. So don't be too surprised that their names
Like,
pop up again.
Oh, the thing is, between the two games, I think Okanogi is actually the same character.
Really? He was.
It's actually
Nah,
suggested.
he can't.
It
be.
is
Oh, okay.
suggested, but it's not.
Higurashi is a story within the Umineko universe.
But also, it also said that he might be like an older version of himself in like Umineko versus Higurashi.
Yeah, yeah,
How?
it's possible.
That's really messing up with my head. How the hell does Okonogi, who is a fictional character from a fictional story?
Well, we know there's a fictional story called that. We don't know if it's definitively the same one, Des.
It has to be. It's like, do you think?
No, there are plenty of examples in literature where people have like pieces of literature which they reference that share the name with the book title that you're reading, for example.
But even in the
There are
anime,
plenty of
you
examples
see
of that.
Maria watching television, and then
Which isn't an actual segment from Higurashi. It's not actually a segment with Higurashi from the actual anime, I'm pretty sure, though.
but the characters are there. Like,
Oh, the characters are only there in the PS3 version. That's it.
Huh?
Like that's not actually a thing that happens in like the original.
I mean, are we even gonna, like, decide that we consider Umineko anime as canon, you know?
I'm pretty sure
it feels
it's not.
like it feels just like a what's the word? Easter egg.
Yeah, it's a reference.
okay.
That's all it is.
But if it is still there on the manga, like I'm gonna read manga too. If it is still there on the manga, then it has to be canon. No, but just quickly, while we're still on the Angie thing, Angie stayed on Kirie's family home. I don't think they would treat her that well. Because these are the same people who hunted Angie down on the future, right? I'm pretty sure they wouldn't treat Angie like a kid should be treated. They would still be very cold, even though they weren't hunting down Angie.
I don't think they would be. I actually don't think so, because Angie does have a lot of money backing her. So think of it like this: if a kid is really nice, but they have a lot of money, you want to be nice to the kids. So when they grow up, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure." I don't think they'd be mean, because being randomly mean would be bad to a kid with a lot of money.
Also, like the part that we see that was hunting her down is Kirie's sister. I assume when they say family, they're talking about Kirie's parents, who we know treated Kirie favorably.
Yes.
So they probably treat Angie like a little princess.
Okay.
There's something about Battler constantly just... I imagine a man with your looks would leave girls crying left and right. That's no big deal. It's fine. Like, bad's gonna happen if I forget, like, a promise here to a girl. What? It's not like someone's gonna die over it. Oh my god, Battler, he's dumb.
I mean, to be fair, in most circumstances, he would be right. It's just, unfortunately, he's in a visual novel, so he's stripping all the loser flags.
It's like, it's not even just that. It's like, he specifically has to be into the one girl ready to kill people, you know?
I mean, she wasn't ready to kill people when he was interacting with her, to his credit.
That's fair.
She wasn't at that point yet.
He brought her there.
In part, yes. I mean, I'd argue Kinzo did more on that end than that.
I mean, if you think about it, all the family members contribute something to Shannon. In a way, you could say Shannon is a family project. And if you think about it, like, every single family member did something to contribute onto the straw that's gonna eventually break Shannon's back, you know?
More specifically, not even just the family, it's also the servants that are serving specifically on that day, which is the reason why they were the ones that were chosen. In a way, if you think about it, this whole thing is basically her being like, well, I'm just going to destroy everyone that made me.
One thing that's probably really interesting is that there is conflict at almost every level of the Ushiromiyas. From, like, the grandparent, sure, but also the adults. And it's not visible yet, but also with the cousins. The cousins are constantly being like, hey, look, we're happy-go-lucky. But secretly, they're all part of a harem except Maria. And there's a massive conflict there that you don't see. There is conflict at every level, but the thing that ties all the cousins together in, like, conflict is actually, like, Beatrice / Shannon.
And none of them know.
Exactly. It's a hidden conflict, but there's conflict everywhere.
I mean, it kind of just reminds me of that meme that I've seen a lot, which is just like Shannon or I guess like Beatrice standing there and be like, the inheritance goes to whoever I like the most at the moment of my death or something. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous that way.
The answer's Battler, but okay.
He's not as gentlemanly, I say in inverted commas, as George. And also George is smart. Like, book smart. Like, he did well at his exams. Which I can't see Battler doing somehow.
Actually, I can see Battler being good at his exams because I think he's naturally gifted compared to George. Like, one of the reasons I think George has such a complex concerning Battler is George had to be forced to learn a lot of stuff. But Battler naturally interested in mystery stuff. He's like the kid of Kyrie, spoiler alert, and like even Kinzo all the way up there. I think he's got everything laid out for him to be like really smart and good.
I mean, I think Battler is relatively smart. I just don't know if he's exam smart.
Yeah, I don't think he's smart. I think he's dumb, honestly. He just works hard to get to some reasonably good conclusions.
I don't think he works all that hard. Oh, yeah, later on maybe. I don't know.
I mean, not in school, but for example, after the first Twilight, when they're all discussing the killings on the parlor, he wouldn't get there for himself, but since Kirie teaches him how to use the chessboard mentality, he kind of uses those tricks to direct his reasoning. Like, that's him working hard. That's not like some gift. That's the way I interpreted that.
That's also a case of him being like a reader XP. When you need to place the reader in the position of like one of the characters, teaching him chessboard thinking is teaching us chessboard thinking.
I also would have two counts on that as well. One, we have to remember the first two chapters, which is probably part of the reason why he's extra pervy in those two, are fictional constructs created by Shannon. And her memory, of course, of him being a total perv, so...
I mean, my theory contradicts that, because the way I see it is that Sayadin did not read everything on the first episode. She wrote, like, the basis, and then Ikuko and the other guy whose name I always forget, they added the details, and they were the ones who added that personality to all of the characters, including Batra.
I'm not necessarily certain if that's the case for, like, the first one. Maybe for, like, later ones. But definitely not the first, because it wasn't them that found it. It was some random folks.
But then, do you think Sayo would have the time to write so many message bottles with that level of detail.
Well, it depends on when she did it, right? Because we've had this discussion before. You were under the impression that she wrote them that night, as I understand it, and then she threw them out. In which case, absolutely, she would not have had the time. But I was under the impression, at least, that she would have probably written it beforehand, quite some time ago, just as a prolonged revenge fantasy, that she probably did it over months.
In my imagination, Sayo wrote these bottles maybe a year and a half before the incident even started. I imagine it's more like a scenario where it's that after they became the head of Ushiromiya families, they start writing bottles. And I imagine they could be bottles that had Angie exist in them, since maybe she just like imagined that maybe Battler would come back. And maybe some just didn't.
Just substitute Edge for Battler, because presumably she also heard that Edge wasn't coming. And she could have presumed Edge would be there.
She realizes, oh, I guess this is when I start murdering.
If you think about the possibility that she substituted Battler for Edge, it would also account for why Battler, to be blunt, just doesn't do very much.
No, that can't happen. Like, she can have written beforehand versions of what if Batra comes back, but she can't just swap Angie with Batra, because Batra is the detective. She couldn't have a 6-year-old be the detective and then just swap it with Batra.
Why not?
In my imagination, the bottles are written in a way that's like a murder mystery, I guess.
A mystery.
I think it's like closer to a murder fantasy, but yeah.
At least the rules of a mystery have to have been there. Because she even writes some...
Yeah, but also do note that, like, under no case does she ever say, like, Shannon alone, like, her writing, she never really makes it the case that she follows a standard mystery.
Well, when I think about what I think the bottle would say, I thought it was just more like people show up on the island, and then people start dying, like, mysteriously, and the end, like, not... Maybe it's just more like a... Doesn't necessarily have to inherently write enough clues or anything for people to, I guess, solve it. Or maybe it's just, like, more like a fantasy killing where she gets to be like, now I could live out my deep, dark, like, thoughts about how I could just brutally kill everybody in this, like, hole of a family, you know?
I would disagree with you there, because I think the whole point of Saya was wanting to be understood. And so I think she would totally write enough clues.
Also, if it was just a murder fantasy, why would she include the letter from Maria, supposedly?
Oh yeah, isn't the whole bottle written from Maria's point of view?
Written by Maria, yes.
A fake Maria, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Yasu pretending to be Maria, like writing the bottles.
Oh, speaking of Maria, Des, remember you said you were talking about that interview with Rikishi where he talks about her being like the Joker?
Ah, yes.
My interpretation of that is that it definitely isn't the Batman type. He means like the card.
Yeah.
She's like a trump card.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, like there's no way he's referring to Batman right now.
Yeah, I found that extremely weird, but yeah, that makes much more sense, okay.
We're all thinking it from a Western perspective, but remember, Japanese boy.
The Joker is called that because he's an unpredictable individual. He's a wild card, he's a trump card. He gets his namesake from the same origin. And that's what Maria is, from the perspective of the other family members, an unpredictable individual. Sayo's perspective, she's a very useful tool that can be used to kind of, obfuscate things.
She's always the one that, like, delivers a letter.
Well, because she believes, so, like, it's very easy to use her to basically kind of like, yeah, I saw Beatrice, because she did, from her perspective.
Exactly.
Because she believes so earnestly.
Yeah. You all need to go read that part of the manga, because some of the stuff you're saying, it's kind of like just assumed on the visual novel, but it's straight up confirmed on the manga. So, I think you're gonna love reading that part.
Yeah, I mean, I have very fond memories of reading The Confession of the Witch. I think, doesn't it show up in, like, EP 7 or, like, in EP 8 or something?
It's episode 8.
Yeah.
Episode 8. It's right before when Angie and Batra are speaking about, okay, let's actually not destroy the Golden Land, and then Lambda joins them and they go to the City of Books.
Okay, that makes sense,
Of course, it's important to remember that Confession is a bit controversial with some of the fandom because it provides us some with definitive answers.
But that's exactly the point. It's basically a gift for the Umineko fans who have been with the series for so much.
But
for so
also, you need to think more flexibly. That's like the one thing. This is the one thing that's constantly like screamed at through the entire book. Think more flexibly.
Yeah, I really think Umineko is the kind of story where it's just filled with unreliable narrators, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I think it really demonstrates this really well, I think in EP7, where Ginzo tells you this like really heartfelt story about how he met the first Beatrice, the Italian Beatrice, in the underground base, and how he was able to...
And just incest.
I mean...
Wait, are you saying he lied?
So, I mean, the story is like, Ginzo tells them that he saves Beatrice from the Japanese and the Italians who are like fighting with each other over gold, and then in the end they all died, and him and Beatrice were the only one alive and walked out of it. But like at the same time, you like that story and it's beautiful and all that, but like after that Nanjo comes out and says, well, I go drinking with him sometimes in the gold room, like the room with like piles of gold, and he says like there's just like a bunch of skeletons there like as trophies, and like he immediately invites you to think like maybe Ginzo like didn't tell you the true story. Maybe Ginzo was the one who manipulated the two parties to like fight each other so he could get the gold and also get the girl, you know?
Damn.
And for a lot of people, the fact that it was ambiguous was, I mean, I know a lot of people were unsatisfied with that, but for a lot of people it was also, that was kind of part of the beauty of it, because it meant that you didn't have the same boat as Enja in real life would have been. Because there is no way of knowing definitively, really.
I mean, if we really want to talk about controversial things that we have no idea what it is or what the reliable narrative it is, we should talk about Rokkenjima Prime.
Real quickly, if I can really have a point out here, we can argue about what happened to Rokkenjima Prime, but I don't think 7, while she says it's the truth, I don't think that's the case, because that means you have to assume that the dummy-ass adults all actually solved the epithet, and that seems crazy to me.
I mean, if Eva on her own could do it, it's entirely possible that maybe, like, one of them was like, maybe we should go to the library, and as a result they take credit for it, something.
Like, I was having this conversation with you the other day. There are so many answers on the first episode. Like, you've got the answer to Kinzo, you've got even the answer to how the fuck Kinzo got the gold, when siblings are all, like, the kid siblings are in front of the portrait. Like, it's all there. All of the answers are on the first episode. Straight up.
I mean, is it surprising? Did it surprise you that he got it?
It's a hint, yeah.
Like, I mean, I always assumed that it had to have involved some sort of thing that he was viewing as Beatrice. I just wasn't sure if it was an actual person. Because he is crazy drunk.
But yeah, from like reading EP1, Ryukishi is just really daring all of the reader. Like, rereading is just so intense. Like, there was just like so much information just like littered everywhere.
Yo, bruh.
They all really need money, which makes them very bribable.
Yeah, I love the whole concept of that screenshot of Kinzo being like, all the siblings are incompetent. And also, Maria's ugly.
Obscene to the eye could be interpreted as
annoying or obnoxious.
Yeah, that was my interpretation.
That's how I always read it.
But...
I mean, it's a bit cruel to call like an 8-year-old. But then again, it's Kinzo. To be honest, that's very much in his MO.
Yeah, another thing that I thought was really funny reading through the novel is just the part where Eva and Rudolph are getting really mad at Cross about this whole thing, and they just keep being like, well, Rosa, don't you agree? And just like drag Rosa on board, and Rosa's like, sure.
Yeah. Yes.
They're all just bullying the youngest, being like, hey, you're gonna agree with me, right? Oh my god.
Oh, also, one thing I kind of forgot about, which I found interesting, was the fact that they talk about getting beaten with like a bokken
sword
and things like that.
Yeah,
was like a really common thing for all of them. And realizing that, it actually makes Rosa's treatment of Maria make a lot of sense, because most people who are like kind of like that justify it by like, well, I got beaten up as a kid and I'm fine. And look, I'm only using my hand. I'm not even using an object to hit them, so it's not going to be as hard. So I'm actually much nicer than my parents were.
Yeah, those subject to abuse are most likely to replicate it.
Yeah, like, Rosa is not in any way excused for her awful parenting, but you see a lot in this, which is kind of like, yeah, no, I see where this is coming from.
I mean, I always have seen Umineko as a story of a cycle of abuse, And honestly, everything that's ever happened in the story could be traced back to Kingzo's behavior.
And Kinzo's stuff could be traced back to his background.
That's very true.
Well.
That's very true. But yeah, definitely rereading EP1 is just super upsetting to me, because to me, rereading them just makes you be like, oh, there's super cute and nice moments between the family members. They could be nice to each other, but then next scene will just be them at each other's throat, arguing about money problems.
Umineko is a rough story that you can love all the characters, but then you also remember they're all also kind of shitty.
But that's just real life, right? I mean, a lot of people are kind of shitty, but you still have to find some way to care about them, especially when it comes to family.
Do I have to?
I get you.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, and I feel we didn't even go that deep into how vicious and cutthroat Eva is in the first part. Eva is just so she literally shows up and just almost roundhouse kicks Rudolph's face, and she's just so
especially
spiteful.
Natsuhi. Eva does not let an opportunity go by without fucking trashing Natsuhi with words.
Oh yeah, absolutely. She hates that lady.
She's constantly trying to assert her dominance because she doesn't get respect otherwise. Well, no, it's true, because she's a woman, she doesn't get respect otherwise. It's the only reason why she's been able to hold on as long as she has, to be blunt.
Yeah, there's a whole part, then she, and when she got married, she, begged Kingzo to let her keep the family name, and then even made her husband change name, and then got back into the Ushiromiya family at that time, when Cross, and Natsuhi didn't even have a child. She must be so triumphant when she, was able to give birth to George before, Natsuhi. She, really waved that baby in front of Natsuhi,
When she was able to get George out of the baby factory, I get it.
I guess that's one way to put it. But she really just had a clutch onto that power,
It's interesting to note as well, when you look at the timeline, that George obviously would have had to have been born, and that would have had to happen before Sayo was born. Because if that had happened, then she probably would have been just like, nope, go away, Eva.
Exactly.
Adopted child will be head now.
I was reading some part in which Natsuhi is just completely depressed about what Eva is saying, and I can totally be inside her head and being like, oh my god, if I had not thrown that baby off of that cliff, you wouldn't be here, Eva. This was the worst decision of my life. I am never throwing babies out of cliffs again.
Alrighty, that just about wraps it up for our first episode for the Umineko Book Club. Thanks a bunch for sticking with us up until now. Hope to have you listening in for future episodes.
Good luck reading Umineko is my thought.
Incest is bad, kids.
We will be continuing this, starting with the epitaph, so hopefully you will join us again in a couple of weeks or so.
When we cry.
Yeah, see you next time.
Well, sea cats do crimes.
See cats do crimes, and see you next time.